Shalom, shalom, dear friends. How are you? This is Yehudah Glick from Jerusalem. We are here today, less than a week from Passover. We are here today as we are actually getting our preparations for Passover. We're at home, but we are preparing ourselves for this wonderful holiday of God's redeeming His people. Shalom Yiska Bat Yerushalayim. Hello. And we are waiting for that special day that God is taking us out of Egypt, taking us out of all of those borders and all of the slavery, taking us out to be free people. And when are we marking this year? In a time that we're all locked up in our houses. We are all limited by the rules of our governments, by the plague, the epidemic that's taking over the entire world. The entire world. United States, China, Italy, Germany, UK, Israel, Africa, Asia, Latin America. It's going all around the world. And we are sitting in our houses and we're taking this wonderful opportunity to say hello, to say shalom to our friends all over the world. Because what more can we do at these days but connect. And the best way to connect is through friendship, is through God, is through the Word of God. And today we'll be dealing with a very interesting question. Shalom to Elsa, London. By the way, when you say shalom, tell us where you're from, so we'll know the people that are watching us all over the world. Where are you from? So I am from Jerusalem, and I'm talking directly from the Word of God. Shalom Ima, Shalom Irma, and Shalom Nelly Vorst from Netherlands, and Angieska Jawarska. Shalom, shalom. I hope we're pronouncing your names properly, but tell us where you're from. We are talking now from Israel, from our house, and we are trying to understand the process of the Exodus from Egypt. And one of the, Shalom Irma from Louisiana. Shalom Shechina Lei, tell us where you're from. And we are talking about the Exodus from Egypt. And today I want to deal with a very interesting question, which it seems like it's so easy. The Exodus from Egypt. We celebrate on Passover. We have a Seder night. We celebrate. Shalom Charlene Berzilio from USA, and Shalom Elsa Oibrant London from Stockholm, Sweden. The Exodus from Egypt. The Exodus from Egypt takes place when? And Shalom Ade from Madrid. I hope you're well now. And we hope you're doing well. And Shalom Rai B from Melbourne, Australia. Shalom Mishael Elisheva from Australia. And Shalom Rina Mikuli from Washington State. And Shalom Anita Mason from Northern Ireland, and Ari Weissman from Zichron Yaakov. And the question I want to deal with today, Shalom Moadim L'Simcha from Carl Ben Didi from United Kingdom. The question I want to deal with today is, when was the Exodus from Egypt? When was the Exodus from Egypt? Did it take place at night, or did it take place during the day? It seems like everybody will tell you that it takes place during the day. I'm opening the book of Exodus. It's at night, opening books of Exodus. And we see in chapter 12, God tells Moses, on the first day of the first month, tell everybody to get ready. Tell the people of Israel that on the 10th day of the month, everybody should take a lamb per household. And if the household is too small, then join with your neighbor. And what shall you do with the lamb? You should keep it until the 14th day. And then on the 14th day, you bring it as an offering, and you put the blood on the doorposts, and God will save you from all the plagues on Egypt. This is the day. And then for 7 days, you shall eat non-leavened bread. And that's what happens on the 14th day of the month. In the evening, we'll eat it until the 21st day. Shalom all over the world, all dear friends. So for 7 days. And then what happens? We read in chapter 12, it came to pass, on verse 29, at midnight, the Lord will go over every firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who is in the dungeon, every single firstborn animal. And Pharaoh rose up in the middle of the night, and he, his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great outcry in Egypt. There was no house, there was no dead. Shalom to Santiago David Yacom from Ecuador. And Pharaoh rose at night, and there was no house, which no one was dead. So he called Moses at night. He called them at night, and he said, "Get up, get out of from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go worship your God as you have taken." Shalom from Hungary, Herzig Zoltan. And so Moses was called in the middle of the night to take the people out. And so the Egyptians also. In verse 33, the Egyptians woke up and told the people, "Yeah, come on, get out of here, we're all dead, come on, get out of here." And the people picked up their dough. It was not leavened because they didn't have time. The children of Israel did according to Moses, and they borrowed different objects from their neighbors. And the Lord gave favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and they lent them. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot. And so what we see here, is that of course the Exodus takes place at night. But surprisingly, when we reach verse 41, it came to pass at the end of 430 years, it came to pass on that very day. So we're talking about a day. But the next following verse, in 42, it is a night of anticipation for the Lord to take them out of the land of Egypt in the night. So the night they were taken out of Egypt at night. So here it says at night, and then it says in the day, and it goes on and on. The very question, Shalom Indonesia, Mini Logeto, it was wonderful to see you here. And in verse 51, it repeats again, it came to pass on this very day, God took the people of Israel out of Egypt. But if the story is here, the problem does not go on only in the book of Exodus, in chapter 12, because it continues. Because when I open the book of Numbers, in chapter 3, it says, here we are, I'm reading, and it says that God takes, one second, I'm just going to find it, in the book of Numbers, we can actually first even look here, in chapter 3, verse 12, "And I took the Levites from the people of Israel instead of the firstborn." And in verse 13, because mine is all the firstborn, the day I took the firstborn of the Egyptians. I sanctified the firstborn of Israel. So here he's talking about the day. When we turn to the book of Numbers in chapter 33, chapter 33, in verse 3, and they traveled from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day, the day after Passover, the people of Israel left Egypt with strong hands. So here we're talking about the day. But when we go into Deuteronomy, in Deuteronomy's chapter 16, verse 1, once again, what are we talking about? Preserve the month of the spring and make Passover for God, because in the month of the spring, God took you out of Egypt at night. So here we see, we're totally mixed up. Some of the verses it says that we were taken out of Egypt at night, and not only to say we were taken out of Egypt at night, it said the Egyptians, we had to run fast, we didn't have time to prepare our bread. We had to get out of Egypt because it was night. And in other verses it says, the Exodus of Egypt happened in the day, on that exact day. So there we are standing and facing this wonderful question. Was the Exodus from Egypt at night or at day? The truth is, when we follow the story of the Exodus from Egypt, we see that day and night, darkness and light, play a very major role. I want to take you back to even from the plagues in Egypt. In the book of Exodus, in chapter, we are in chapter 12, in chapter, 10, when the plague of the locust has covered all over Egypt, it says in chapter 10, verse 15, and it covered the eye of the land, vatechshach haaretz, and the whole land was dark, and it ate up all the crops and all the trees, whatever was left over from the hail. And Paro calls back Moses, and he says, I'm sorry, this time I was sinned. Please forgive me, and go and please beg God that he should take and save us from this locust. But then it goes on. The next plague, what are they talking about? God tells Moses, stretch out your hand on the heaven, on the sky, in verse 21, and there will be darkness all over Egypt, and they will feel the darkness. And Moses stretches out his hand, and there was pitch darkness all over Egypt for 3 days. They didn't see each other, and they didn't get up 3 days. And for the people of Israel, there was light in their settlements. So, darkness and light and darkness is what's happened in the story of Egypt. But it doesn't stop there. It continues on and on. It continues on and on. Because when we see the exodus from Egypt and we reach the Red Sea, what do we see? We see in chapter 14 of the book of Exodus in verse 15, God says to Moses, what are you yelling at me? Talk to the people of Israel and go ahead. You stretch out your staff, you face it to the land, to the sea, and what happens? And we see what happens. And verse 20, Vayavo, and the angel comes between the camp of Israel and the camp of Egypt, and there was darkness, and there was cloud and fog, Vayaer et halayla, and it brought light to the night. So here we see the whole process of the exodus from Egypt takes place throughout day and night, darkness and light, day and night, all the way to the morning. In verse 424, Vayhi b'ashmoret haboker, and it came the day, and the people of Israel turned back, and they saw that the entire Egyptians was wiped out. And Vayosha Adonai bayom hahu et Israel, in verse 30, and God saved Israel on that day. And the people of Israel saw the great hand of God. So here we see that the whole idea of day and night is going back and forth throughout the whole story of the Exodus from Egypt. And it plays a major role. But still we don't answer our question. When did they leave Egypt? Was it at night or during the day? And we have to understand that the concept of light and darkness and the concept of day and night are basic concepts in the relationship between God and the world, in the relationship between the people of Israel and the world, and in the relationship between God and the redemption process. And I want to take us back to the very first time where darkness and light are mentioned, of course. God's very first word to the world, his first creation through his word, in chapter 1 of Genesis. Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or, chapter 1, verse 3. Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. Shalom Ruchama Avital. Shalom. And God said, there shall be light, and there was light. By the way, this is the only creation at all that is mentioned what God said there shall be, and there was. All the other creations, God says the earth should take out of itself things, or God created things. Here is the only where it says God said there shall be light, and there was light. And what was there before? In verse 2, the land was full of darkness, and the Spirit of God over the water. So the whole world was water and darkness. And here we see, when God is coming to talk to the world, once again, light and darkness played with each other. Because when God created the world, the whole idea of creation of the world was to take the darkness and fill it with his light. And that's what God does on the very first day when he begins the creation, the first thing he wants to do is he announces light on the world. And not only that, he looks at the light and he says, the light will be good. And not only that, he calls the light a name. The name of the light is day. Vayikra Elohim la'or yom. God calls the light day. And that's what God does. All the way at the beginning of creation. And here we see that through the Exodus from Egypt, the big question of day and night, we're playing with back and forth. And there's a difference. What's the difference between whether we went out of Egypt at night or we go out at day? It's a totally different issue. When you go out at night, it means you were chased away. You ran away. You ran away. The Egyptians woke up and kicked you out of here. But going out at the day, going out in the day means going out as a free person. Now listen what happened. The offering of the Pesach offering was brought already the day before. They were still in Egypt. They brought the lamb and they announced their freedom while they were still in Egypt. On a personal level, they could decide. Even if you're sitting in Egypt, even if you're sitting as a slave, you can announce yourself to be a free person. They took the lamb, which was a symbol of the gods of Egypt, and they put the blood on their door, announcing to the world, we are free people. We have announced our freedom to the world, and we're not ashamed of it. God, to find out what houses they lived in, he didn't need the blood on the door. He could have looked at the mailbox. He has his ways of finding out. He didn't need that. The putting the blood on the doorpost was their announcement. We're not afraid. We are free people. We're not afraid to take your God and put it on our doorpost. But from here on, there are two different aspects. There's the aspect of the Egyptians waking up and chasing them out. But the people of Israel didn't go out at night. They waited till the morning. The victory of God takes place even during the night. In the dark of darkness, God is there with us. God is there with us. And the question of God taking us out of Egypt, God could take us out of Egypt. But he wanted us to come out as free people. He wanted us to come out as a free nation. He wanted us to get up in the morning and decide when we're going to leave and how we're going to leave. And not they're going to chase us out. We're going to wake up and we're going to do it. And we're going to tell our neighbors to give us products also for the way. Because we're going to go out of Egypt as free people. And that's what the people of Israel did. But when we look at the words of the prophets, we can go see that the concept of day and night, of light and darkness, will accompany the words of the prophets for on and on. I'm just going to read a few of the words when Shalom Huanong, Shalom, Shalom, blessings to you. I believe you're from China. Shalom. If you're not, tell me where you're from. In the book of Samuel 2, at the end of King David's days, when King David is concluding his words, his very last words, chapter 23 of Samuel 2, and these are the last words of David. The saying of the son of Yishai, the man raised on high, the anointed of God of Jacob, the sweet singer of Israel. And what does he say? In verse 3, at verse 2, the Spirit of the Lord spoke on me and his word was upon my tongue. The God of Israel said concerning me, spoke the rock of Israel, the ruler over men, shall be righteous man. He that rules in the fear of God. What does he say? And as the light of the morning, when the sun shines, a morning without clouds, more than the light that follows the rain that falls upon the grass of the earth. For my house is not so with God. For an everlasting covenant has he made with me, fully set forth and heated for all my salvation, and all the desire before him, for he will not sprout forth. So God says, King David says, yes, the anointed one is the one who sees the day of the God of light, is the one who sees the day of God's light. And we can see that again and again. I'll just give a few more examples. A very famous example, of course, in Isaiah 60. We all know the whole concept of light. It plays a very major issue. Shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord hath shone upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and a gross darkness the kingdom of the Lord shall shine upon you, and his glory shall appear over you. This is the God we're talking about. This is the God, and everybody worships him. Everybody can call him his name, but his one and only God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God whose throne is in Jerusalem, the God whose throne is in Jerusalem, and he's the king of the entire world. And he says, the light will come from Jerusalem to the whole world. And then he says, lift up your eyes all around and see, they have all gathered and come. Your sons shall come afar, and your daughters shall be raised on their side. This is the way God is telling us. Then you shall see, and your heart shall be started and become enlarged. This is the idea. Feeling and seeing the light of God is not only a physical issue. It's an idea of the redemption of the world. It's an idea of the redemption of the world which can take place when people are redeemed. So the exodus from Egypt is a new creation. It's a creation of light from darkness. But here in this creation, in the creation of the redemption process, we can't trust only that God will pick us by the head and take us out. We are the ones who have to create ourselves as free people. And I want to continue the book of Zechariah. In Zechariah 14, you all recall when God is talking about all the nations, and God's fighting the nations, and he says to them, he's going to put his feet on the Mount of Olives. And what's going to happen in verse 6, on that day there will pass the day that there will be no light, only disappearing light and thick darkness. And it shall be the one day that shall be known to the Lord, neither day nor night. And it shall come to pass that at evening it shall be light. Where do we get this idea? This idea comes from the exodus from Egypt, that in the middle of the night can be day. The miraculous time of the redemption from Egypt. The miraculous time from the redemption of Egypt is when the day can be in the middle of the night, can be day. If we are understanding that we are free people, even if we're locked up in our houses, we are free because we are servants of God. When you're a servant of God, and when you're connected to the God whose throne is in Jerusalem, you can call out to him and say, God, prevent, withhold all plagues to the world. You can tell him, God, we want to see your miracles, but we are free people because we are your servants. We are free people because we are your servants, and we worship only you, the one God of all over the world, the one and only God, the God who chose the people of Israel. And he told them, you shall bring a light to the world. You should be a light to the nations. This is the concept. You should be a light to the nations means you shall bring the message of redemption. And therefore, I really believe that everybody who's watching us now can say to himself, I am a free person. Can say to himself, I am a free person because I am a servant of God. I am a servant of the one and only God, the God who created the heaven and the earth, the God who chose Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God whose throne is in Jerusalem, and he wants us all united, but not all united through plague, but all united through the light of God. And we can turn, the whole idea of the Exodus is the redemption, is turning light dark into light, is turning darkness into light. This is something we can do. Because when God began the world, he did it by himself. But then he created man in his image. And he said to man, now you are to rule over the world. You are to bring my light to the world. And that's what we're celebrating. Next week, when we celebrate the holiday of Passover, we'll be closed up behind doors. We'll have to follow the rules that God has put in this world this year. But we will be able to stand up on our feet and together call out to the one and only God and thank him for the great miracles he's done. And when at the spring, the whole world is beginning once again to come back to light, we will be the ones to announce His light in the world. And from here, I really want to stand up and call out in the name of God, God Almighty, our Father, our King. You can join me in the prayer. Our Father, our King, withhold plagues to the world. Our Father, our King, remember us for good. Our Father, our King, we want to be a light upon the nations. We want to bring your light to the world. Our Father, our King, we believe that there is no king in the world but you. And we believe that your throne is in Jerusalem. And the light of Jerusalem will come to the entire world. And then redemption will be. But we understand that we have to take upon ourselves this mission. So when we are standing here and calling out our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, please bring salvation to the entire world. Our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, please bring salvation to the world. Our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, please bring salvation to the world. Our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, please bring salvation to the world. Shalom to India. Madhan Babu. Shalom Roy Candle. Shalom. Our Father, our King, please bring salvation to the world. Our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, please bring salvation to the world. Our Father, our King, our Shepherd, please, we want to walk. Even when we walk in the valley of death, we want to feel your light. We want to feel and we want to bring your light to the world. Our Father, our King, we are alone in our houses, but we are united throughout the entire world from here, from Jerusalem. Our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, please bring life and good life to everybody. Thank you so much, everybody. And shalom, shalom from Jerusalem. Shalom to Brenda. Shalom to Elsie. Shalom Roy. Shalom Madhen. Shalom Carl. Shalom Juan. Shalom Ernie. Shalom Ruchama. Shalom Mini. Shalom Herzig. Shalom Santiago. Shalom Elsie. Shalom Trieka. Shalom Carl. Shalom Ari. Shalom Anita. Shalom Reina. Shalom Ishael. Shalom Ra'eh. Shalom Ade. Shalom Else. Shalom Charlene. Berselina. Shalom Shchinale. Shalom Erna. Shalom Angieska Jawarska. Shalom Nelly van der Vorst. Shalom Erna Rubin. Shalom Elsie Londin. Shalom Yiskabat Yerushalayim. Shalom from Jerusalem to everybody. Our Father, our King, whose throne is in Jerusalem, bring life to everyone. Withhold all plagues. Shalom from Jerusalem. Love you all.